Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major, and I am so excited to have who has now become a good friend of mine, Marc Kramer from Vin Uni. And he's going to tell you all about what Vin Uni is, because it's a magical place in Hanoi, Vietnam. And while he is talking to us in his spare time, while he's in Philadelphia, right, Marc? You're in Philadelphia.
Yes, visiting family here.
Visiting family. He will have to go back to Vietnam soon, where I will inevitably want to join him. But some of you remember I did a talk at Vin Uni in December, and it was magical, all about the future of AI, and got to meet Marc's students. And I'm going to let him tell you all about his bio, because there is no way I would be able to do it justice. So, Marc Kramer, welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I love the name Every Day's a Train Wreck. That is like the most creative name of any podcast I've been on. So I love the name, and you've already posted when you spoke at my school,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I hope people will see it, because we had 780 students listening to Marley talk about her book and about AI and where it's going. And it was fantastic. And the students got so much of it and was so timely for our hackathon, which was focused on how do we create jobs in the AI era.
Yeah.
And so that's probably more important now than any time, because
Yeah.
people are competing on a global basis, not just with other people, but now the machine is the competitor. So
Exactly.
that's tough. Just quickly, my background is I am a serial entrepreneur who never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started my life as a sports writer. My dad was in business, my grandfather was in business, and I swore to myself I would never be in business. And I was hoping I would end up writing for Sports Illustrated. Unfortunately, I met my wife,
That's
and
an unfortunate. You
yeah,
better watch
because
it.
it was unfortunate in the sense of I decided that it was more important to be married to her and have a family than it was to become a career sports writer.
Okay.
And so I ended up changing my whole path. And it turns out the only thing I was good at was coming up with ideas and starting new businesses. And so that's how I ended up doing it. Now, roughly 40 years later, I've written 6 books on the subject. One, which was named one of the 30 best business books by Executive Book Summaries. I've won an Inc. Entrepreneur of the Year award. I wrote a national column for 10 years for American City Business Journals, which is a big business publication in the United States. Most importantly for the world, I started the world's first formally organized investor angel network, which the Angel Capital Association mentioned in their December 23 report, that the very first one was started by me. And now we have them all over the world. So I feel great about that. And I've done 30 startups. I've raised over $3.2 billion for my ventures, but I haven't made FU money yet. So,
Well,
so
yeah,
I think
but
that's what
you're not
every
done with me
entrepreneur
yet.
aspires to.
Yeah. Well. Sidebar. I'm working Marc all day long on making fu money with me. So we'll see. We'll re-interview you in 6 months and see if it's fu money. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds great and be wonderful. It is. So I taught 10 years at the Wharton School Executive MBAs, and now I'm teaching at Vin University. I've been in Vietnam for 3 years, and Vin University was founded and started by the richest man in Vietnam, Mr. Vong, who owned 16 different companies all under the Vin Group name. They started the first electric car company in Southeast Asia. And so I started working for them in March of 2023, which I can't believe how
Yeah, I
fast the
know.
time has gone. And Vietnam is a magical place, as Marley found out. There is great talent there, and there's going to be enormous upside for anybody who invests in that particular region. Kids are very smart, very
Yes.
aggressive, very hardworking. So I've been lucky to be there. I started Asia's first high school entrepreneurship competition, which we're in our second year. We have 181 applicants from around Southeast Asia. And I wrote the plan for the first MBA in the world that's focused on AI, how to either as an entrepreneur and intrapreneur start a venture. And now I'm working on a plan to create a unicorn launch pad along with all the other stuff. So I typically work a 6-day week and I work probably 12, 14 hours a day. So, and I have two kids, and one of my kids is also an entrepreneur. She has a global public relations business called Clover Communications. And she, like me, said, I will never be an entrepreneur. I'm never going to be, I just want to work 8 or 9 to 5. And now she
Yeah.
has a very successful venture. And my other daughter is very entrepreneurial and works as a brand ambassador for companies.
Why were you so adamant that you never wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Well, my dad also did not want to be one. He wanted to be a history teacher. And my grandfather, who immigrated from Russia, who had worked for like Sun Shipyard and so forth, started a business, a cafe across from a big steel mill. And he got into that and then he started a wholesale drug business. And I mean, like, you know, aspirin and toothpaste, not like we might be
Not
thinking about.
fentanyl. Yeah.
Yeah, not
Okay.
that kind of drug.
Yeah.
And then my father joined his father in this wholesale drug business. And about 13 years that worked out. And then it didn't because my dad didn't really know how to scale.
Uh-huh.
And then my dad started a medical equipment business, leasing hospital beds, oxygen, and that type of thing. But I would watch him work almost every day. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. I don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be having to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, eat breakfast, get to the store. And on vacations, that's the thing I hated most was he would call into the answering service two, three
Right.
times a day. And
Yep.
so you're never off, as an
Right.
entrepreneur. And I thought, I definitely don't like that. And I like the idea that I would be traveling with teams, interviewing coaches. And I did for 5 years. And I got to meet some of the most amazing people at that time. So I thought that was great. But then I graduated in 82, 10 major newspapers folded, and jobs were hard to come by. I met my wife, who was a beautiful, smart lady, and I was married 25 years, and we
Yeah.
had two beautiful kids. So I was very lucky to have met her, and she was from Latin America, grew up in the States starting at age 12, and that opened up my whole world, and it changed everything. I don't think I'd be sitting here talking to you if I had not married her.
Yeah, and I've only met one of your daughters who I had a ball with.
Yeah, Sydney.
Sydney is a spitfire.
Yes, she has a lot of personality
Yes,
and great
Sydney
with
will do well
people.
in the world. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so when you say you didn't want to be an entrepreneur, is the net of all that you wanted to be able to have the time to yourself, like to actually be off? Was that like the most important component or
I think the stress of when you're starting a venture and all the hours, and that you truly never have vacation time
right?
because your brain is constantly running about all the things you could do. I would have people say, I'm divorced now and have been divorced, separated for over 15 years. And girlfriends would say, so are you done? You mean like, can I stop now and spend time with you? Yes. Am I done? No, because there's never a time that
Yeah.
there's not something, as you know from being an entrepreneur,
Yep.
there's always one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And you end up, I get up at 5:30 in the morning, read for 45 minutes, exercise for an hour, go to school, and then I work from, let's say, 8 in the morning till 1 o'clock the next morning. I sleep 5.5 hours. And this goes on almost every day.
Yet you're one of the happiest people I know.
I am.
So okay, so I want to push back on that and
With
say
no drugs.
right, and I want to say what part of that then does not work for you?
So now, I mean, I guess now that I've been doing it for so long, I've been really lucky because every day I get to do what I want to do, and I get to be creative, and I get to impact people in a positive way. So I have no regrets about how my life turned out. It turned out more amazing than I ever could have imagined. And now what you see, Sports Illustrated really doesn't exist anymore. If I didn't make it onto ESPN or one of those kinds of broadcast shows, I'd have had to do something else anyway. And I knew lots of people who had to leave the field because there were no jobs.
Right.
So I like the idea as an entrepreneur that you control your professional and financial
Mhm.
future, that you decide what you want to do and
Yeah.
how long you want to do it and what you want to do. So I think you find entrepreneurs for the most part, even if it's a struggle, happier than the average person who's
Right.
working for somebody.
And yeah, I agree with you. And it's just so funny because I call it the entrepreneurial bleed, right? Where there is no separation. I mean, I love how articles will say, "Oh, have a separate office in your home so that you don't see your desk," and whatever. I'm like, I have a couple separate offices in my home, and yet I will still work on my bed or I'll work, wherever it is because you're always I mean, to me, you're always working in your brain. I mean, and sometimes I
Never
think
turns off.
it never turns off. And so I think that's probably why so many entrepreneurs have ADHD, because I just feel like that loop, that's just constantly going where you're like, oh, I could do this. Oh, I could be doing this. I could be doing that. And it's a little bit of a curse. But at the end of the day, we do get to pursue what it is we want to pursue. And I'm just trying to imagine you doing anything. I mean, I just can't imagine you doing anything other than sleeping 5.5 hours a day, right? Like, if
And
all of
I'm
a
a
sudden,
deep, deep sleeper, like dead sleeper. So I get 5.5 hours of really great sleep. So I wake up in the morning, I feel very refreshed and excited to take on the day, and I don't take any naps. It's worked out great for me, and I've met amazing people.
oh
And
yeah,
I like starting things like you were on my podcast, The Best
yeah,
Business Minds.
yep,
And now I've interviewed over 400 authors globally, and it's won 6 international awards. And I've met amazing people. Many of the authors have come to Vietnam and visited me,
yeah,
which has been great. And then I started a podcast since I've been here called Asian Founders and Funders. And that has opened all these doors for me
right,
throughout Asia, and it got me speaking gigs and lots of other things. So I'm a big believer that you can't be afraid to start new things and fail.
right,
I tell my students, I said, the only thing in life you have control over is effort. You don't have control over who falls in love with you. You don't have control over who hires you. You have no control over the outcome. The only thing you have control over is get up
yep.
and give your best effort and not be afraid to try things. And I've lived my whole life like that.
That's terrific advice, and and you can say it's effort or it's mentality, and I was binge watching this show that is really random, but to me, it's very symbolic about what we're talking about, and it's called Alone. And on Alone, this show where they go to these extreme places, right? And it's like 12 people, and they go to this last season has been in the Arctic, right? And it is so fascinating to me that, kind of the first handful in the first whatever, maybe week or something, they drop out because I think they call it drop shock or something, where they know they're going to be alone, but then they're dropped into this place and they really are like, oh my gosh, I really am alone, like catching my own food, et cetera, et cetera. And then a few other people, like they get some kind of stomach bug. And so then they're out. And then a few other people, it just goes on and on. And they're like, oh, I miss my family. But what's really interesting is how by the end, the one that will win or the last couple are the ones that really can just control their brains and where their brains go, whether it's like, do they just start ruminating about something that doesn't exist? Like they've had no experience with the outside world this whole time. And this one guy who I thought was going to win, he somehow from the beginning was talking about how he was so great being alone. He loved his own company. I'm telling you, by the end, he had convinced himself that one of his parents was dying while he was on the show. And he really kind of talked himself out of the whole thing.
He
And
fell apart.
he completely fell apart. And sometimes I think of that's really symbolic of the entrepreneurial journey, right? Is
Yeah,
like your job is just not to fall apart.
that's why it was a good fit for me because I'm always even keel all the time.
Yeah,
And it turned out to be a great profession for me because I don't get flustered by anything.
right.
And I think as an entrepreneur, and we teach our students to have the entrepreneurial mindset, which I think is incredibly important for
Yes.
anything in life, that no matter what's thrown at you, there's always a plan that you can make. And there's always a way of fixing whatever that problem may be,
Right.
even if it doesn't ultimately. Like I said, they could throw anything at me in life. If I had to go cure cancer, I'd figure out a process to give it my best shot.
Yeah.
Might not turn out, but I'll
Right.
give it a process. I think people who become entrepreneurs, they really realize that there's a process to solve anything that you want. and then they just go about. They don't panic at all. They don't look and go, "Oh my God, they've changed the rules of the game on me." They
Hmm.
adjust to the new rules that happen.
Or they
And
might panic, but the customers never see them panic.
I think once you've been doing it for a while, nothing seems to really phase you in life. Like I moved to Vietnam, and people said, "Oh, well, it must have been a tough adjustment." Nope, I adjusted the first day. I had a home in Panama for 15 years, no problem. I just think that if you are embracing life and you are enjoying whatever that is that they throw in front of you, then it's not as difficult as if in fact you're already pushing back before you even got started. And we see people like that, right? That
Mhm.
are so risk adverse that they make a phenomenal experience a disaster. Like that guy you were talking about in the show,
Yeah.
the more he would have embraced the process of the show and what he was going through,
Right.
and if he would have drawn on the fact that he enjoyed being alone and why he enjoyed
Right.
being alone, he'd have been fine. But he immediately panicked about this, and then the rest turned out, I'm sure, to be bad for him.
Right. Right. And how do you, I think you are probably, I mean, well, you're one of the most optimistic people I know, but you're probably even more optimistic, yet still practical, right? Because entrepreneurs sometimes can be overly optimistic
I'm
and
practical all the
y-
time, as you know from dealing with
y-
me.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I think this is a great idea. Here's what we need to try to do it. It's not going to be easy for these reasons, but
right.
here's how we should position ourselves to give ourselves the best shot.
Right. And and I love that. And how do you what would you say to one of your students who is, let's say, maybe they're not your student at the time, but maybe they were, proverbially 10 years ago, and they're in the middle of their entrepreneurial journey and certain things are working, but let's face it, to me at least, it's harder than anybody could ever explain
Absolutely.
it to you. The
Yeah.
highs are higher and the lows are lower. So,
Yeah.
what do you say to somebody who might be listening right now, who might be, whether they're a student or they're an entrepreneur, they're in the middle of something really tough in their business and they feel like they've turned left, right, they pivoted, they tried all these different things. Like, what's a strategy to just see it from a totally different perspective again and go at the problem again to try to solve something that feels unsolvable?
I've had people come up to me and say that, and I said, "When was the last time you took a road trip and just got in your car and observed our things, or got on a plane, and maybe you go and you spend a month in Southeast Asia and you talk to people there, because all of a sudden new ideas come in."
Mhm.
When I work with major corporations and helping them innovate, I never let the people sit in the same seat every day. I make
Oh,
them
great.
move around the table. And I said, because that way you have a different view. If you sit in the same seat every day, the view doesn't change. And so you're not going to percolate new ideas.
Right.
I tell them all, go read Inc. magazine, go read Harvard Business Review, keep reading what other people are doing, listen to videos on YouTube. The more stuff that you're exposed to, the more the popcorn maker in your brain is going to
Right.
go off, and you're going to have all kinds of great ideas. But if you keep doing the same thing day after day, you
Right.
eat the same meal, whatever that is,
Yep.
nothing new is going to come into your brain.
Right. And it's so funny you said that about the popcorn and the popcorn maker, because something I was writing about today actually was like how you have an idea, and let's say it's business or it's just something that lodges in your mind, and it starts as a little kernel, right? And then it's like the kernel pops, and then it's almost like the popcorn expands, and like this guy in the show where it just expanded and expanded, and to the point where it's like he had a whole field of corn, instead
Right.
of just the one kernel of popcorn, because that's sort of what he was manifesting. But I I like your idea so much of, even if it's just changing seats or changing rooms or changing directions, or you're so right, just going on a drive. I mean, I think so many times we're just stuck like with our head down in our phones, and just going in a drive like with the music on, right? And just thinking about whatever it is you're going to think about, and listening to something completely different. Like, I've gone on this thing where I started going back to listening to different things on YouTube, right? Because yes, podcasts are podcasts and so much of it is still on YouTube, but there's something different about going to that app's interface or another app's interface, right? Even like Threads versus Instagram, that it dislodges something in your brain that has felt really stuck, right? And then it's like once you kind of blow it open, like if you're mining or something, it's like bam, it cracks.
I mean, look, now you can use chat and you can say to chat, here's the idea I came up with. Tell me what I'm missing,
Right.
or tell me a different direction that I should be taking a look at. So
Yeah.
there's so many places to go, or you join a group of other entrepreneurs and you share with them what the thing is that you're doing and asking for their perspective to go and do it. I just think there's so many ways, but a lot of people, especially new entrepreneurs, if it's not working right away, just like relationships,
Yeah.
they're ready to jump out
Yeah.
of it.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's take a look at all the options here
Yeah.
before we
Yeah.
do it, because yeah, this looks like a really good idea. Maybe it's a different look at it. So there was a guy who created kitty litter that lasted a long time and didn't smell and so forth, and it wasn't going well for him. And one day he had a flood in his basement, and he decided he had to go get a water vac. And he goes, "What can I use to block the water?" So he started putting his kitty litter in socks. And he called it crap in the sock, and he put it in there, and he blocked the water. He went to the hardware store, got the water vac, came back. The water was all gone. It was all absorbed. And this guy was in Erie, Pennsylvania, and he went to the hardware store and told the guy what happened. He goes, maybe it's a product. Maybe that's what I should be doing. Turned out so well that 25 years later, he sold the business for $255 million.
Oh,
dollars.
wow.
Yeah. And there's
Wow.
lots of these kinds of stories that
Yeah.
if you're around long enough, you hear them. I mean, there was a woman named Yasmin Mustafa, and she started a company, Roar for Good, with a partner, and she had gone through Latin America and found out how women were accosted in horrible, violent ways. And they all said, I wish there was something I could have pushed a button and told everybody where I am. So she created that. And so in the beginning, she sold it to almost 38,000 dads like me who said, this is great. Our daughter
Yeah.
said, "You know what? This thing is so ugly. I don't want to wear it."
Yeah.
So she pivoted to hotels, and then the pandemic came and that killed that. She pivoted again, but this happened over a period of 10 years. And now she has a very successful business providing this pin to first responders and people who could be at physical risk. So she never gave up on the idea, and she kept changing her perspective and who she could be, who could benefit from her idea. And many people just give up too soon without thinking of all these things. The guy with the kitty litter,
Yeah.
he looked at that. So I think as somebody who's going to be an entrepreneur, before you throw in the towel, you should ask even other people, what could I do with this that I
Mhm.
came up with? Is there other uses that I could take for this?
Yeah.
And if you've exercised everything that you thought you could do, then you can say, I've done everything. I've talked to everybody. Maybe it's just not my time for this particular idea, but don't give up on the fact that you could come up with another new idea and give that a try.
Yeah, I love that. And why do you think first to market is so difficult?
Well, two things about first to market. One is you have to convince people that this idea of yours is good,
Mhm.
right? And that's the
Yeah.
hardest thing, is finding the first buyers. But the other thing is, if you looked at all the success stories in history, none of them were first, especially recently. If you look at Google, they were like the 17th search engine.
Yeah.
Facebook became behind Friendster and MySpace. And again, you look at all of these success stories, and none of these guys were first.
Yeah.
They were early, but they
Right.
were definitely not first. And the first, it's just like the D-Day invasion. The guys who go to the beach first usually get slaughtered. Guys behind them see a new picture of the field, they make
Right.
adjustments, and they succeed. Even Airbnb was not first. There was VRBO and some
Oh,
others.
right. 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 You're right.
Yeah, and then they adjusted their game and said, "What if just the average person wants to rent out their house in Reading, Pennsylvania
Yeah.
for people who want to go hiking in the Pocono Mountains?"
Yeah.
And they adjusted their game, and now they're the leader, right? Far and
Yep.
away, Airbnb.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're a leader when homeowners associations and all kinds of people have specific laws to keep you out.
Yeah,
I
all
think
the
that's the
hotels are against
that
them in New York.
right. That's when you've arrived, I think, when there's legislation against you. And what do you look for? What do you think makes an entrepreneur successful? Like if you had to say, "Hey, listen, it's going to be this kid versus this kid versus this kid." What do you think the traits are?
I should say this. I did a TEDx talk on the fact that I scored 725 in my college boards, which makes me a vegetable, right? 1600's the top. When I
There's
did my
no way that you 725 what?
725, my father thought it was the time I took the test. He contacted the SAT people and he goes, "This has got to be a mistake. How can my son score 725? You get, that's it, 400 points for signing your name." My dad said, "Maybe you misspelled your name." It was, yeah, it was, and I took it twice and I scored exactly the same score, 725. I said, "Look, Dad, 1450 if you add them up together." And so I didn't do well, but I think what I had going for me was I was fearless and
Yeah,
continue to be. So the idea of failing doesn't enter into my head. Just like, I would go out when I was in college. I went dates with all these Miss Florida and others. Everybody was afraid to ask them out. I'm like, what's the downside? That's how I look
right.
at everything. What is the downside? I started up this podcast and I did it like just in the beginning of the pandemic. If nobody listens, then nobody listens.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's what successful entrepreneurs is. They don't worry about the downside. They
Yeah.
just look at the upside. And if it doesn't turn out well, then they try something totally different. But I have friends who say, "I'm going to go write a book." And these same friends have been talking about for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And I wrote 6 books. And I
Right.
said, all you have to do is start writing. And
Right.
so, I put down the plan and then I went and got told a publisher, here's what I wanted to do. And then eventually I got a publisher. But I just kept putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
That's it. I wasn't clearly I'm not the smartest guy in the room, scoring 725. When I tell my students at Wharton, and I would say to them, "What do you think I scored on the boards?" And they 1550, 1580, 1600. I said 725, and they go, "Math or English?" I said combined.
Exactly.
And they were,
Exactly.
yeah, they were like, "F you. There's no way that you scored. You're just trying to rub in our nose that you probably scored 1600."
Right. Right.
And I said, "No, I'm telling you, that's all I scored." In fact, the guidance counselor at my high school, I went to Coatesville High School outside of Philly, told my dad I was not college material, that I would
No
flunk
way. Did he
out.
really?
Yeah, and I only got accepted main campus, one school, West Virginia. Shows you how smart I
Wow.
was. I didn't know where West Virginia was.
Oh
I,
my God.
I said, "Is that Western Virginia?" My dad, "No, that's why you scored 725."
Oh
He
my
said, "Mark,
gosh,
that's the
Mark.
school that Jerry West went to." Because I graduated high school in '78, and Jerry West had just retired a few years before from
Yeah.
the NBA. And go, "Oh, okay, I know where that is." And went there. I actually loved the school, and I had a good experience. But that was the only school in America that accepted me main campus, and that's because everybody else didn't know West Virginia existed either. So nobody was applying. So they wanted foreign, they wanted people from
Yeah.
outside the state to apply. I mean, when I went to school, study abroad, where my kids went to Italy and England,
Yeah.
study abroad for us was going to New Jersey, you know.
Yes. Yes, I love it. And I don't mean to laugh. I mean, but it's just I am constantly amazed by how people that I mean, I consider you literally one of the smartest people I know. And obviously
Uh,
your resume demonstrates that. And being in Vietnam, you and I were joined at the hip for
yeah,
quite a few days, good or bad. But
it was fun.
for me, I loved it, and I
Yeah.
could have just, to me, it was like Ding and Dong's Excellent Adventure. I could have hung out with you forever. And sometimes I think about it like, wow, I flew all that way. And it was like, it was so nice to meet somebody that you were then so comfortable with. Right. And could have such a great time. But it just goes to show you that, and we've been talking about this because my daughter's a senior in, high school, and everything is with these kids and these early decision and all this stuff. And you want to just keep saying to them, I mean, you don't want to say it doesn't matter because you want them to be motivated and all this other stuff, but there is just so much more. And at the end of the day, it is really about putting one foot in front of the other. Or, the basketball star that turned out to be the star because they knew they had to show up in the gym longer put more time in than everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Jordan took 200 shots a day. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why he's Michael Jordan, is because they used to say when Phil Jackson ended the practice, they said to him, Michael Jordan said, "Well, I'm staying. I'm going to keep practicing." Their guys go, "Oh, like we're going back." And the other guys who'd been with Michael Jordan would say, "Michael didn't say practice was over. Phil said it was over, but Michael isn't. And so we got to stay and keep practicing." And, hence he won 6 NBA championships.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think everybody who does something special is driven, and it has nothing to do with being tall or handsome. I mean, look at Danny DeVito, and
Yeah.
he's been
Oh,
amazingly
totally.
successful. And
Yeah.
if you go to Hollywood, there's all kinds of beautiful people.
Oh God.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because you live out there, but
Yep.
very few of them make it. But the people who are originals, who are willing to do whatever it takes to succeed,
Right.
and I mean in an ethical way, they end up doing just fine. Like you asked me, when I interview students, I interviewed a girl who had scored 1580 in the boards, and I wrote to the president, "We don't want her." And she,
Why?
and she said, "Why?" I said, "She's just book smart." I said,
Yeah.
"But this other kid who scored like 1370," I said, "This kid's going to be CEO of big
Yeah.
companies in Vietnam.
Yeah.
He's charismatic. He's self-assured. People are going to want to follow
Yeah.
him."
Yeah.
And so that's what I liked about him. I interviewed a kid who sells like one of a kind sneakers. He started when he was in sixth grade,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and he was able to tell me, "So tell me, what's the biggest mistake you made? Hiring people that didn't believe in what we were doing." Now
Mm-hmm.
he's only a senior in high school,
Oh,
and he's
jeez.
telling me that
Right.
that takes some CEOs their whole life
Right.
to
Right.
learn this.
Yeah, and some people call it chemistry or job fit or whatever, but you're right. People have to, because you're at the end of the day in a foxhole, right?
Yeah,
People have to believe when it gets tough. They've got to believe in your mission and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And well, I promised you a hard stop, and although I could talk to you forever, as you
I
know, and I will
enjoyed
have you
the
back on.
I enjoyed the conversation. I would say to anybody who wants to be successful, no matter what it is only look at the upside. Don't look at the downside. If you know people who want to find a partner, and they
Right.
go, I don't want to go on Bumble. I just don't want to go on, 5 dates,
Right.
10 dates. I said, well, I would go on 100 dates in a
Right.
year to
Right.
find one person. 100 dates. Well,
Right.
yeah. I mean, what the only upside I can have, if I don't do that, I can't have any upside.
Yeah.
Or the book I won this award for, called Small Business Turnaround, was the first book written about how to turn around a small business.
Yeah.
47 publishers turned me down,
Wow.
and I was even offering to cover their losses. And then
Yeah.
my publisher, McGraw-Hill, because I wrote a successful book on networking called Power Networking, she goes, "We used to have an editor here. He had a business and it failed. I think maybe he would like this book." So she sent him my proposal,
Yeah.
and he didn't call me. He sent me a contract and a check. And that
Wow.
book was named one of the 30 best business books by Executive Booksellers,
Wow.
which was a big deal 25 years ago.
Well, it's a
So
big deal today, even.
yeah, I didn't have any fear. Again, the what's the downside of
Yeah.
failure? None.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the upside of something good happening to you, like I applied to Vin University,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I looked on highered.com, and I saw they were looking for an entrepreneurship professor, and they were a partnership between Penn and Cornell. I wrote to the head of HR and said, "Hey, I taught 10 years at the Wharton School. Are you interested?" And they contacted me in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and over 3 months it took me, but finally I got in.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I encourage anybody who listens to your podcast, do not worry about embarrassing yourself
Yeah.
or failing, or any of those things. Just think about all the good things that could happen,
Right.
even if you fail the business, 'cause you're going to meet all kinds of cool new people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Mark, how can people connect with you? Is it Instagram, email? What is it?
They can definitely contact me at marc.k at vinuni.edu.vm. Feel free to contact me there. LinkedIn. I love linking in
Oh,
with
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So if you look me up on LinkedIn, I come very quick up to the top when somebody
Yep.
types my name. Definitely link in with me. I would love to link in with people. And I have about
Great.
13,000 contacts
Of course you
from
do.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course you do. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you and I are going to be in contact very soon off the record from this. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your crazy schedule, because I know how crazy it is, and sharing your wisdom with all of us. So, for those of you who haven't, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, make sure to like, comment, most importantly, forward this to a friend or a fellow entrepreneur or somebody who's like maybe just having a rough go with their small business or their big business, and maybe they need some advice or a boost. So that's it for this week of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm Marley Major, and we will see you next week, next Wednesday, every Wednesday. All right. Thanks, Marc Kramer. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I hope you'll have me back.
I will. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.